Oklahoma Congressman Tom Cole with us right now. Good to see you, sir.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. You know, I was taken by a quote that you had earlier on CNN. You said that I would not want to be the Republican that derails the train. I'm assuming this is the train of health care. The question is that a threat? Is that a promise? What happens to these Republicans who say it's just not enough?
It's certainly not a threat, frankly, and I agree very much with what Brian had to say. We're going through a good process, and this bill has gotten better as it's moved through the committee process. He mentioned the work requirement. We also had an additional amendment that you'll see in Rules Committee next week that's targeted toward people that are 50 to 64 to try and help them with a higher tax credit than they might have received under the initial proposal. So again, it gets better as we go along. But I do think there is a political imperative here, and our voters did send us here to repeal and replace. And this is a plan that the president endorses. He's been very open to changes in it. He wants to work with everybody. Frankly, he's been instrumental, I think, in creating the movement we've had so far. Yeah. So, again, I feel good about where we're going, but it would be tough to go home and explain, at least to my voters. Now, I couldn't help the president when he thought this was a good bill. I couldn't help the speaker. I didn't trust either of the major committees of jurisdiction to pass this through. You know, that's a hard argument.
Well, but just next door to you from Oklahoma and Arkansas, the senator there is making that argument. No one can say that Tom Cotton isn't a conservative, and he has said essentially that if you pass this bill, that it puts the House majority at risk. And I understand a seat like yours in Oklahoma is probably not at risk, but if you take a look at the current nose count right now, this is McClatchy's vote counting here. They say 218 to pass, obviously, in the House. 112 lean yes, 98 unclear, 27 lean no. That does not give you a lot of wiggle room, and clearly there's some Republicans who are pretty worried about what this means when they go back home to their districts, unlike you.
Well, I think, again, most of your voters, no matter what district you represent, also voted for the president. And frankly, the presidential vote is usually more important. I like to say I got 70% of the vote in my district. President Trump got 66. If we got in a fight, he'd keep his 66 and I'd get about 4. So I think you need to recognize that. But in terms of, you know, where we got to go, look, the Senate needs to engage in the legislative process. I have no problem if they disagree with us. They just need to pass their own version. They can either amend ours or pass their own bill. And then we'll go to conference and work it through.
Congressman, we only got about another 60 seconds. But in a way, you are in a fight with the president. The president sent his budget up to Capitol Hill with some very steep cuts to social programs, some steep cuts to some of the programs that are near and dear to rural voters, perhaps near and dear to some of his own voters. And you, among others, on Capitol Hill said, we appreciate your input, Mr. President, but Congress controls the purse string. So how does that jive with you saying you don't want to get into a fight with the president?
Well, I said the president was broadly right. That is, he wants to increase defense spending. I agree. He says he wants to do it in a fiscally responsible way and pay for those increases with cuts elsewhere in the budget. I agree with that, too. I don't agree with the particular cuts that he proposed. We need to look at the entire budget. About 70% of it are so-called entitlement programs. That's where the real money is, and none of the cuts actually reach there. Now, there's ways to do that, and I put several of them on the table. But that's, again, the legislative process. Right. At the end of the day, we're on the same team. We'll get to the same place.
Well, the entitlements that you bring up and so many Republicans, including the Speaker, have in the past is something that the President promised he wouldn't touch. We want to continue that part of the conversation sometime soon, sir, so come back.
I would love to do it.
All right. It's great having you, sir.